That says if the devil whispers to make a person sin, then the more Ruach whispers to promote good will of Hashem. Yeah, but we close our eyes to bribes, right? The bribe blinds the eyes, closes the eyes. Shoshannah says all unvaxxed crew, Rob. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you mean like the consultants are unvaxxed or something? I mean the contractors? Sorry, my throat is very sore. You have to bear with me. I'm drinking lots today. Not whiskey. Before the Motsi Shemra starts. By the way, just to be sure you guys know, there's Lashon Hara and there's Motsi Shemra, right? So Lashon Hara is the general category, like Doc was thinking about before. Thank you, Doc, for bringing it to mind. Yeah, look, I resisted talking about a certain someone who left us recently because I don't want to accidentally do some Lashon Hara, you know. I want them to get well and to get spiritually whole and to come back to us. You know, we need to have a place where people can feel free to make teshuvah when they need to come back after sinning. So look, the Lashon Hara is when you speak badly about somebody and it's the truth. All right? It's the truth, right? And it's not for the purpose of protecting somebody, right? We don't have time to get into all of Lashon Hara. We have countless teachings on this before, so I don't want to get into it too much. If you're new, ask some of the other congregants and they can teach you. Motsi Shemra means bringing out a bad name. This is when you're talking about somebody else and it's a lie, right? So Lashon Hara covers both categories, true and false. You're telling the truth about them and it hurts them, right? So say, for example, say you had a Telegram chat with a teacher of yours, okay? And let's say that you were extremely arrogant and rude to the teacher, and then later you delete some of your rude comments so you can show somebody else the chat. So it looks like you're righteous, right? So this would be a form of Motsi Shemra because you're making it look like the other person responded in an unbalanced manner because you deleted the very, very bad stuff that you said to them from the chat history, you see? So that's just kind of an example of Motsi Shemra. You're not being honest even about hurting the other person's character. You're being dishonest about it. You're lying about it through your actions. So that's why I was saying before that it's not Motsi Shemra against Jollibees because I've got witnesses, credible Torah-keeping witnesses. If your witness is not a Torah keeper, be careful. The halakha, we don't trust someone who's not a Sabbath keeper. Okay. Shoshannah says it's all true, Rob, about the malpractices. This is sad, not just Jollibee. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. You know, and these places here that they charge the poor people, they tempt them into a loan, right? They take their ATM card or they some other kind of collateral that they have to pay from their upcoming paycheck. And they charge them like 10% interest a month. Some kind of just extreme wickedness. These people are so desperate. Oftentimes they don't have enough for rice. And then they're charging like this. It's just an evil business. I know sometimes people are tempted to buy franchises in these businesses. I've had people come to me, you know, Rabbi, what about this? I have a good chance I can get into a kind of business like this. Someone's offering to give me their franchise for cheap. No, you cannot. You can't touch that kind of business. A business that preys on the poor like that, 10%, or even if it's 5% per month, that is wicked, wicked, wicked preying on the poor. That's why in Hebrew it's called neshekh. That kind of interest, it's called biting. You're biting at the person's livelihood. Shoshannah says they're more like a nasty scorpion, yeah. Okay. Shoshannah's following up that particular instance, Jollibee sacked the whole crew. They fired. For those of you who speak not British English, they fired the crew. Dr. Vera says, what Rivqah did. Is there an issue that the end justifies the means? Thanks. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, for sure. If we go with the sage opinion that she is a prophetess, why did God bother to tell her that the Rav Ya'avod Seir, right, that the greater one shall serve the younger one, right? Why would he bother to tell her that? I believe it's so that she would act and make sure that what was supposed to happen happened, right? Like we've talked about this sometimes before, about God interfering sometimes in the world. He gives us free will. He permits us with free will, right? We are not predestinationists here, right? We don't believe in Calvinism, the idea that God makes everybody do everything they do, right? He creates some people just for hell, right? We don't believe that. That is not a Messianic Jewish perspective. Instead, we all have free will. But sometimes he injects himself to make sure that his greater goals happen. So sometimes he'll force a situation, right? So that happens. And so that's the case with the prophecy to Rivqah. I do not think Rivqah would have had the chutzpah to interfere in such a way if not hearing from God himself. Or possibly, as I mentioned last time, we have from the Haamek Davar the idea that Avraham Avinu was the one who went to her and told her the prophecy. Yeah. So it's a good question. In general, the ends do not justify the means. This is a Machiavellianism. For those of you who don't know, Machiavelli, he was the first recognized political scientist. He was an Italian, and he wrote a book called The Prince, where he recommends to the aristocracy, specifically the leader in Italy, that he should seize power by all means necessary, that he should do what he needs to silence detractors, execute whoever he needs, etc., because the ends justify the means, right? So even though it seems deplorable to murder people, to deprive them of their lands, in the case of feudal power, strength, or whatever it is, you must do it so that the greater good of having a strong leader in Italy will come to power, right? And so generally in the West, after the philosophers and the Enlightenment, and people understood the Bible more as they're more literate, there is a pushback against Machiavellianism, it's called, right? In fact, this is a great insult among the intelligentsia in America. If I call someone, you're Machiavellian, don't trust that guy, he's such a Machiavellian. This is an insult. It's saying he has no character because he employs the ends justify the means. That's a great question, Doc. So instead, no, it would not be permitted, but in this case, because God himself intervenes, then yes, he's using the prophetess Rivqah to make sure that his plan happens. Thanks for asking that. Okay, someone writes me in private. Very well put about the hierarchy of being kingdom citizen above any country we are patriotic about. Hence, we can be properly aligned in the kingdom's agenda. All the more we apply here why we need to love him with all our heart, our mind. Hence, we won't be emotional and be maybe persuaded to non-Torah beliefs and values and give into unnecessary deception. Yeah, exactly. That's right. When you get the news, it's good you have multiple sources, right? Never go to state-controlled media, for example. If there's a government that controls the media, like Russia or Communist China, you can't trust anything coming out there. And other journalists tend to lie as well, right? They have their political motives. So you need to check multiple sources when you're trying to make a difficult decision and how to pray for geopolitical things. We have a lot of intercessors in our kahal, so I'm kind of speaking to you guys that when you're trying to find out what the truth is of a scenario, get multiple sources, you know? All right. Sorry, my throat's sore. Just a moment. Dr. Vera says most media are Midianites. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, in the States we have a very corrupt media. So they're not state controlled, but they are 96%. This was a Harvard study that was put out in the late 2010s, in that time period, that 96% of American media are of one political party, the Democrats. So they have their narrative, right? So they're usually against, and mostly the Democratic Party, that is the party of abortion. It was a party of slavery, pro-slavery. It was a party of Jim Crow that oppressed the slaves when they were free. The Republican Party was formed as an abolitionist party to end slavery. And yet the Democratic Party is so good at lying and the media on their side that today most African Americans believe that the Republicans were the ones who hated blacks, when really it's the opposite. It was the Democratic Party that enslaved them. Yeah, so it's kind of amazing how the enemy really can twist things. So yeah, you got to be careful. So even though our media in the States is not controlled by the government, it kind of is right now, because the White House, which is a Democrat, the dead man, right? The dead man who talks, he will send out a signal, and the media, they kind of all run to protect him, rah, 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 to protect him, right? So even Americans, where we have free media, we have to be careful to really dig and see. So you have to have some other sources like Ben Shapiro or Fox News or some other conservative pushback media. Now, when the conservatives and the liberals are saying the same thing, then maybe it might actually be true, right? Like the case we have in Ukraine right now, right, where peaceful democracy was invaded by a tyrant. All right, continuing on, let's see. Verse 6. ורבקה מרחה על יעקב בן לאמור, לפני-יי שמעתי את אביך מדבר אל עשו אחיך לאמור. Now Rivqah, she said unto Yaakov, and for some reason there's special emphasis here on Rivqah with the word order. So it's, now Rivqah said, I think the text is trying to show us who the guilt for deceiving Yaakov is, deceiving Yitzhak is really on. So pay close attention. The Hebrew is very, very specific on what's happening here. Putting the blame for deceiving the husband on Rivqah, not on Yaakov. So usually we would say Amara Rivqah, but instead it says Rivqah first. And in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, not modern, in biblical Hebrew, when the noun, when the subject comes first, this tells you special emphasis. That's not the normal word order. So it's really like this. Now Rivqah, like she's the one. Now Rivqah said unto Yaakov, her son, saying, look, I heard your father speaking unto Esau, your brother, saying, verse 7, Havia li tzayid, li mitamim le'ochela. Bring to me now, and there's emphatic K here, bring, exclamation point, to me, game, and make for me tasty things, so that I will indeed eat them. Lifnei-Adonai, now sometimes when I'm reading the musical notation, I get off on actual vowels. Okay, so 7. Okay, so then, so that I might bless you. Okay, the cha here is a defective way to spell you. Bless you before Adonai, before I die. And this usage, see, we have lifnei, it's actually different. The first one means something like by the approval of, right? This word, even though it literally means before, and that's how I usually translate it very literally, but you should understand that when it's lifnei Adonai, oftentimes this means by Adonai's approval, right? So it's actually adding extra oomph to the blessing. And then before I die, it's not by the approval of dying, it's literally temporally before I die. Qimchi says, regarding Havia, she gratuitously added the words lifnei Adonai, as if they had been Yitzchak's words, which they were not. She intended thereby to convince her son Yaakov that the blessing about to be given to Esau was of an unusual, critical importance, one that would reflect a prophetic utterance by Yitzchak. This is Qimchi from the Midrash Tanchuma. So very, very important things happening here. She's impressing this upon her son. Yeah, so there's just that nuance or idiomatic usage of the word I mentioned. By the way, when you see the English on the side and the Hebrew, these are just screenshots from my book. So if you're wondering. So verse 8. The ataveni shema bקולי. So now, my son, obey me. In what, or for the purpose of, how I am commanding you. So Rivqah, in the previous verse, we had the Rivqah Amara, right? So we had the special emphasis. It's Rivqah who's saying, right? And now she's using the very strong language. Actually, two things. She could have just said Shema. Shema by itself implies hear and obey, right? But she added the Hebrew idiom, Shema bקולי, literally hear my voice, listen to my voice, or listen to my voice, which means it's a stronger way to say obey me, right? So she didn't need that bקולי, it wasn't necessary, and she didn't need the word mitzaveh, right? Pardon me, metzavash, it's a female speaking. I'm commanding, right? Related to mitzvah. So she's using very strong language. This is a parental command. So for all of you Protestants who are out there, or you Hebrew roots people who love to pick on our ancestor Yaakov, that he was a usurper, a pretender, a trickster. I'm sorry, even Jordan Peterson, coming from the Gentile tradition, he doesn't get it when he says that Jacob was a trickster. And I love Jordan, but he's just flat out wrong. He hasn't explored the Jewish position. Ironically, it's our story, and he didn't explore the Jewish position. The Jewish position is that he's an ish tam, like the Bible says. He's a perfect man. He's a complete man. He's whole. He's not holistic, but whole. And so the text is going out of its way to show that this is Rivqah's doing. And no, she's not wrong in doing it. She is a prophetess. Sarna comments. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not there yet. Oh, I got them out of order is actually what happened. Okay, don't look at that yet. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. Okay, the Haamek Davar comments, listen to my voice as I instruct you. So he's being hyper literal here, right? We're bringing it to listen to my voice. Shema b'koli. The word to my voice, the b'koli, is redundant. What would have been lost had the scripture merely said, listen as I instruct you, Shema, right? Like we have Shema Yisrael. We don't say Shema b'koli Yisrael. It's unnecessary. Shema implies obedience, right? Listen as I instruct you. We've already explained that every place my voice is used, careful attention and understanding is implied. She told him to listen carefully as she was commanding, matzavah, to hint to him that she is speaking with divine authority. She's speaking as a prophetess now. So I hope this goes back to what you were asking about, Dr. Vera, right? If this is an ends justifies the means sort of thing. No, I think this is a divine intervention sort of thing. God is making this happen through his servant, Rivqah, our ancestor, our mother. More from the HaChayim on Shema b'koli. And again, we wouldn't usually translate listen to my voice. You say obey me, but it's more happening in the Hebrew because Shema means obey and Shema b'koli means obey. You see, so it just like the Haamek Davar is saying, when you add b'koli, it's saying pay more attention to what I'm telling you. Don't get it wrong. Although there is some deception involved in what I will instruct you, he's expanding Rivqah's thoughts here. You still have to obey me apart from your duty to honor your father and mother, which is a positive mitzvah. Rebecca stressed the fact that she was a prophetess, and the Torah commands us to obey the prophets' instructions. Devarim 18, verse 15. We have already explained in connection with Breshit 16:5 that when a prophet asks you to disobey one of God's laws temporarily, he is to be obeyed, only if it's a temporary disobedience or HaChayim. Verse 9. Lifnei-Hashem, לקח לי משם שני גדיי עזים טובים, ואעשה אותם מטעמים לאביך כאשר אהב. Go now to the flock and take for me from there 2 kids, kids of goats. Tovim, good ones, right? Goodly. The essay, so that I might make them, or prepare them, mat'amim, into like dainties or something, like tasty treats. Le'avicha, for your father. Kasher ahev, according to how he likes, the ones that he loves, he likes. Verse 10. והבאת לאביך ואכל בעבור אשר יברכך לפני-יי. Then you will bring them to your father, and he will eat. On this account, then he will bless you before he dies. Verse 11. Vayomer Yaakov el Rivqah imo, and Esav vayehi ish Seir, v'anochi ish chalach. Then Yaakov said unto Rivqah his mother, look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy guy, but I am a smooth guy. I got smooth skin. my bar mitzvah rabbi was so hairy. We used to joke with him that he was Esau, like so much hair, like the shirt would stand up because the hair under his chest is holding the shirt up. All right. So here's our purple note that came up out of order. So Sarna, in the Jewish Publication Society commentary on Genesis, comments this hairy smooth, I've made it in purple here, Seir, chalak, not the other meaning chalak, which is destruction, that Jacob indulges in clever wordplay. The terms evoke Mount Seir and Mount Halak, mentioned together in Joshua 11:17 and Joshua 12:7. The second mount marked the southern limit of Joshua's conquest of Canaan, bordering on Esau's habitat, which was Mount Seir. Jacob hesitates to encroach upon Esau's prerogative. So it's interesting. It's like he's having a prophetic moment here as well. Dr. Vera says, this means his death? Moto, yes. Yep, mot is death. Well, it's actually mavet, right? So mavet is the absolute form, but when you put a pronominal suffix on a noun, the noun has to first be changed to the construct form. And so the construct of mavet is mot, right? So you still have the vav. Remember, it used to be a wa. So in ancient times, it was mawit. So not so hard for mawit to become mot, right? The W just goes full on vowel. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, okay. I have someone write me in private. Okay, someone asks in private, if we are saying that Rivqah isn't in the wrong, does that mean that Isaac was about to do something that wasn't according to Hashem's will? Why did it come to a point where Isaac, being the righteous man that he is, need intervention from Rivqah with help of divine intervention? Why not just give the blessing to Yaakov directly? So this is a great question. What has happened with Yitzchak? We all are vulnerable to bribes, to a shochad, right? The Mishlei says that the shochad, yi'aveh chachamim, that the shochad makes blind even the chachamim, even wise people, even tzaddikim. And now the wise people are not susceptible to a normal bribe. For example, if you say to a wise judge, I'll give you 1,000 pieces of silver if you let my brother off not guilty, he won't accept that. If he's wise, meaning the wisdom from Torah, right? He won't do it. He knows it's a sin. But maybe you compliment him. Oh, judge, you're so wise. We're not going to interfere at all in the case. I just want to let you know that we believe that God has given you wisdom. So you're appealing now to his pride. This is also a shochad, according to Talmud Tractate Sanhedrin. It's a bribe. That's why a good judge will recuse himself from a case, a Jewish judge, if one of the parties in the lawsuit gives him a compliment. He will recuse himself. You see? Unless he's just certain that he's unaffected. He's a rock. He doesn't care, right? He might not let them be in the courtroom, for example, after that. So a bribe, the wise people don't take money or gifts as obvious bribes, but flattery can be the bribe. A person who has an ego problem, maybe he's got an ego problem and people call him rabbi, and he's not a rabbi, right? You're hurting that person because you're bribing them now to give in, to behave badly. There's things that people do. We bribe each other sometimes subconsciously. We don't even realize it. That's why we're not to engage in open flattery. You can give someone a sincere compliment, right, to encourage them, to build them up, right? But when you flatter someone needlessly, that can be a form of a form of bribery, especially if they have any kind of oversight, if they're covering in your life, etc. The opposite is true too. Emotional blackmail can bribe people. You might have a spouse who blackmails you with a fight. You know that if they don't get their way, there's going to be a fight, right? There's going to be a fight in this house. If I don't get my way, some of you ladies might do this to your husbands. Be careful. Be careful if you're doing this. Maybe your husband knows he better not mess with your opinion, because if he doesn't do what you want, if he doesn't have that family reunion or whatever it is, by the way, I'm not picking specific examples. I'm brainstorming here to try to purposely not pick things that apply to anybody, all right? So, but whatever it might be, he knows you're going to get mad, or you might have a signal that you sent him that you're going to be angry, or he'll be in the doghouse for a couple of days, or no sex for him for a week, or whatever the punishment is. You are bribing him. You are not trusting him to be your covering. You're letting your yetzer hara, your evil inclination, get the best of you. And guys can do this too. I'm only picking on women because they're not of the position and authority, right? A guy can do it very easily too because we have authority. We can also very easily send signals. If you don't comply immediately, then this will happen, right? We're not supposed to be tyrants in our household, right? Or those of us in ministry, we have our elders, and and me, we have positions of spiritual authority. Or if you're on a Beit Din, we have to be careful that we're not bribed. We're not allowing people to bribe us through gifts, through flattery, through whatever it is, so that if the day comes and we have to rebuke such a person, we have to correct those people, we're able to do it. And we have to rebuke one another. We're told to rebuke one another, right? That the wise person loves rebuke and he will thank you for it. But the wicked hate it. And the wicked will become extremely angry if you correct them. So to the brother who was asking this in private, this doesn't mean that Yitzhak wasn't a tzaddik. It just means that he's human. He's human. He would have never accepted a direct bribe. For example, from a Canaanite, let your son marry me. You know, let your son marry my daughter. Here's a big field, right? He would have known better to do that, but he likes the way the food tastes, and so he allows himself to be bribed by his son. And maybe Esau's not even trying to bribe him with the venison, right? But he certainly understands he gets favor from his father from it. You don't even have to be aware that you're bribing someone to be doing it. You're trying to get favor at a government office or something. You're hoping that they'll, and you start, or you're the government worker better, and someone's complimenting you, or they're making nice chit chat with you, or they're giving you attention, and people don't usually give you attention because, let's say, you have no ear, your ear got cut off, and they don't like to look at you, or whatever, or you're missing your eyes, and they're giving you attention, and so you feel good, and they're bribing you. They're bribing you. It's a bribe. It's a bribe. We are called as Messianic believers, as Bnei Yisrael, to go the extra mile in showing our love and gratitude for our Father. And going the extra mile means it's not just the simple stuff. It's not just not accepting money to do what somebody wants. It's beyond that. It's understanding that a bribe can take another form. And if you're holding somebody hostage with emotional blackmail to make them do your bidding, this is also in a way like a bribe. You're doing a negative bribe to them. You need to be careful and check yourself, especially if this is women to husbands, for example. You're usurping your husband's authority by emotional manipulation. I've seen this happen in couples before. Actually, it happens a lot, doesn't it? Hope that answered the question to the brother, yeah? He couldn't see because he was blinded by the bribe. Although, to give a little bit of credit, there are some who think that Yitzhak actually was aware the whole time. He's kind of playing along, right? The voice is the voice of Yaakov. Well, shouldn't that be enough to know it's already not Esau? Now, I would push back on this position in that later we're told that he radas, that he trembles, right, when he finds out. So I think that's actually not accurate, but it's there as an opinion. Verse 12. Ulai yemusheni avihi v'haiti be'enayv kimit'ateya v'heveti alahai kelala v'lo v'racha. Perhaps when my father touches me, I will have become in his eyes like a mocker, like someone who mocks him, who makes fun. And I will bring upon myself kalala, a cursing, a dishonoring, v'lo v'racha, instead of, or not, a blessing. The Rambam comments, the reason that Yitzhak will feel him is not for the purpose of recognition. Instead, Jacob said, perhaps he will bring me near him to kiss me, or to put his hand on my face, in the manner of a father demonstrating affection for his son. And in feeling me, he will discover that I am smooth, right? Like on the face. There's no goat stuff tied to his face. Now I wonder why Jacob was not afraid of vocal recognition, for all people are recognizable by their voice. As our rabbis have said, how is a blind man permitted to live with his wife? And how are people permitted to live with their wives at nighttime? Only by vocal recognition. Talmud Tractate Chulin, page 96. Now, if ordinary people have such power of recognition, what of Isaac, who was wise and expert in distinguishing between his sons? As scripture testifies, Genesis 25:28, his love was centered on one. He should truly have the power of recognition by voice. Perhaps the brothers had similar voices, and therefore the sages said that the voice is the voice of Jacob. Further, verse 22 refers not to Jacob's voice, but to his words, i.e., it's an abstract, that he speaks gentle language and mentions the name of heaven. This comes from Midrash Breshit Rabbah 65, section 16. Due to the fact that the voices of the brothers were alike, it was necessary for the sages to interpret the verse, the voice is the voice of Jacob, as referring to the kind of language Jacob used. Did you get that? So if some atheist is arguing with you, come on, he didn't recognize his voice. The sages are saying, we're getting this from Midrash Rabbi, highly trusted Midrash, right? The Falashim Jews accepted as scripture even, right? That it's very old, that this is idiomatic for the manner in which they spoke, right? Like you could recognize a boisterous voice rather than a humble voice. It may be that he altered his voice also in order to speak as his brother did, for there are people who know how to do this. That's the Rambam. Yes, I do. What if he spoke like that? It is hard. Okay, let me see. There's some more comments. Nelly says, as Rabbi said, husband needs approval, wife needs appreciation. Sure. Someone writes in private, so he was not aware a bribe was going on? Correct. As most of us are not aware, right? The transaction of a bribe is usually quite obvious. Even though like in places like in Slavic countries like Russia and Ukraine, I remember, people hint. They give the police officer a bottle of vodka. Oh, look, it's your birthday. I heard it's your son's birthday, right? It's clearly a bribe, right? Or they put money in the passport when the police pull them over in the vehicle. Well, one time I accidentally did something like a bribe. I didn't even realize it. Well, I was flying into Ukraine from I think it was from Deutschland somewhere. I think from Hamburg. Yeah, I think I was flying from Hamburg. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Anyway, I was flying into Ukraine, and I sat next to a Ukrainian general on the plane, and we started chatting. And this was years back, over a decade ago, probably 15 years ago. And I was telling him, because Ukrainian attitude back then, they weren't very patriotic. They felt like we were nobody, we're downtrodden people, And I was telling him, no, you guys, you have a great chance. You can really become something. You have intelligent people. There's a lot of people who are educated. You could really be one of the many amazing nations that are out there. And, you're the capital of ancient Russia. Before there was a Russia, there was a Ukraine. I mean, there was a, Kiev, right? The Kiev was the capital 1,500 years ago. I mean, and he liked the conversation, right? I was just trying to encourage the guy, right? And he gave me his business card, and he said, look, if you ever need anything, you ever have any kind of problems, you call me, okay? So, okay, thanks. I didn't understand what that meant, right? The power that he had given me. And so since I had my passport on the plane, I just put the card in my passport. So then later, I don't know, weeks later, months later, I'm driving around in my little smart car in Ukraine, and I get pulled over by a cop. Sometimes they'd see my Swiss license plate to pull me over, or sometimes they're just curious. I'd get pulled over all the time by police. They'd never seen a smart car, and they wanted to see it, right? And they'd just talk, have a chat, and say, okay, thanks for stopping. They'd let me go, right? Anyway, so he asked to see my documents. So I showed him my driver's license and my passport. You got to give your passport. And when you open the passport, the business card from the general fell out. I'd forgotten it was in there from plane flight. And he looked at it, and he read the title, and he just put it back in. He hands me the passport. He says, thank you, citizen. Have a great day. And so only after the fact, I was telling some friends about what happened. Isn't this weird? Why did he do this? And they said, oh, my gosh, what was the business card? I said, oh, it's this general that I met on the plane. He's scared of your contacts. He was frightened that he'd get in trouble for messing with me because I have some friend. So that's what the general meant. When he said, if you need any help, you ever are in trouble or someone wants to hurt you, just call me, right? So the idea was that he will shut them down. That's how it works in these Slavic countries, and so, or at least it used to work. I don't know if it's still that way now. So that was a bribe. I didn't know I was doing it, but I accidentally bribed that police officer with the power of my contact. You see, so bribe, it's not just about money. It's about, hinting to them that they might get in trouble at their job because of somebody right? Anything like that. Okay. Dr. Vera says, could it be that Isaac knew from Rebekah that Jacob should receive the blessing and he agreed with Rebekah, but because Esau was his favorite, and maybe also that Esau convinced his father that he should receive the blessings, could it be that Isaac insisted to bless Esau instead? Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah, we were exploring that a little bit before. Like, surely she told him at some point in time, hey, I heard from the Lord, right? Or if it's the case that it was Abraham who told her, hey, your father told me this, right? It's certainly possible. Yeah, and in fact, we even see this with Esau's behavior, right? Like Esau, we see that when he's 40 years old, he sees that that's when his father married Rivqah, and so he marries at 40 years old. So he does outward emulations of his father, it seems, to seek approval, but he doesn't understand the spiritual significance, i.e., don't marry Canaanites, right? So it seems like as a son, usually seeking approval, he's trying to do something to get approval, right? That part's okay, but he just doesn't have the right character. He didn't work on his midot, his character. Which, by the way, if you feel that you're not a good enough person and you want to work on your midot, please make sure to check in on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Sister Annie has the intercessors and midot meetings where people are working on praying for the nations, praying for Israel, and also on working on our own personality traits, our character traits, to be better people. This is really important, not just that we understand the law and that we know that Yeshua is Messiah, but that we're always improving ourselves. This is what Hashem's going to look at. He doesn't compare us to other people. He compares how we took his salvation seriously enough to make changes in our lives always. Shoshannah says, changing voices is my talent. Right. Yosha says, but how was that a bribe since you didn't even know you had the card in there? So it's a psychological tool. It's a psychological bribe, right? So you can bribe someone directly or psychologically, like passively. You can deal with their subconscious, right? So you can curry favor with, okay, have you ever heard about a book called How to Make Friends and Influence People? Now, I never read that book because I loathe the title. I hate people like this. I despise people who try to manipulate others, like do this for the person and then do that and then ask them to help you with something and all these little manipulations. Like Benjamin Franklin said, as soon as you move in the neighborhood, ask your neighbor to help you with something so then he'll feel like, what. I don't like manipulations like that. I prefer for people to be real, right? And I want to be real. I judge myself very harshly when I think, oh, I wasn't behaving real that day. I didn't do things the way being true to my own character, right? The character I want to be, right? And but when you do these types of manipulations with someone to get them to do what you want, yeah, you're bribing them. You're bribing their personality. You're giving them something that they want. It might not be a tangible gift. It might be praise. It might be food. Right? That they like the taste of it, right? It might be. Now, this doesn't mean you can't do good things for other people because you like to help them. It just means that your motive must not be to curry favor. You understand? It's not manipulation, right? So Esau might not have been aware that he's bribing his father. But the sages who are commenting on this, and the Midrash Tanchuma specifically, section 8, talks about that this is what happened. This was a bribe for Yitzhak, that he received it as a bribe. It bribed his neshama to favor his son, rather than, like Dr. Vera is suggesting, following the prophecy that he probably knew about. Hopefully he didn't know about it. I'd like to believe that he did not know, but it just seems hard to imagine. Yosha says a bribe can only be a bribe if intentional. Not according to the Chazal. Maybe in the Western perspective, sure. Like in the legal sense of Western democracy, nobody, if they tried to accuse you of bribery for something like this, then yeah, some of these things you could go to jail. If you gave biscuits to a senator, that could be considered a bribe, right? You gave him some yummy food he liked, or you bought him alcohol, you bought him expensive cognac, $100, 100 pounds cognac. That can be considered a bribe, right? So the food stuff, even in our modern society, yeah, that's a bribe. That's very often considered a bribe. That's why if you go to meet with a senator or congressman or governor, in the States at least, and you bring a box of chocolates or something, he will push that away. I'm sorry, I can't accept that. There's a pastor, very famous pastor, Hebrew roots guy, who went to jail some time back. And I don't want to say his name because I believe he was being persecuted, right? I'm not saying that he didn't do anything wrong. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I believe that it was the devil trying to shut down his ministry. And I don't like, he says the name. I don't like that he says the name, but he brought a lot of people to Torah, this person. And anyway, he went to jail. And I was in communication with his wife when he's in jail. I offered him Hebrew lessons. I wanted to, help him, lift his spirit while he's in jail. I figured, hey, what if you can learn Hebrew from an Israeli, Messianic rabbi? But, the thing would make him feel good about it, right? Maybe he'd like that. And he'll not be, I can't imagine how depressing prison must be, right? But they wouldn't allow it. He's very limited in the time he has with other people and online time and all that stuff. And she told me something to pray for, that they had allowed him to, I can't remember what it was, like to meet with some pastors or something. One of the prison guards had allowed this, and it was their decision to allow it or not. And so his wife, after the fact, out of gratitude, gave some chocolates to that prison guard. She genuinely just felt like, oh, I'm so glad he did this because my husband's so depressed, right? And so she gave him some chocolates. After that, the disciplinary board came down on them. You're trying to bribe officials. So you see, foods very often, even in secular societies, are considered bribes. And she did not consider it a bribe, but the system sure did. Yoshua says, what about this verse? from Mishlei 18:16. Well, it's such a small font. I'll try to, okay. Matan Adam, the gift of a man, Yachiv lo, it makes stable his situation, or literally makes wide for him. Lifnei Gedolim, and between the great ones, Yan, I can't see the vowels. Yan Chen. Okay, yeah, it gives them a good disposition to one another. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think this is talking about social norms, for example. So, for example, if we go to a Slavic country and you come to my apartment and I don't offer you tea or anything to eat, this is part of the society. This is what we would call derech eretz. So this proverb, it's talking about a classification in Yiddishkeit that we call derech eretz, right? So derech eretz is literally the way of the land, right? So there are cultural norms which must be abided by. So I believe that's what this proverb is talking about. So if you come to my house and I don't offer you tea or anything, right? You come in out of the cold, I don't offer you any kind of warm drink, I am seen as a crude person, right? I'm violating the derech eretz of that Slavic nation, right? Like Ukraine and Russia, for example, right? So I think that's what this is talking about. This is the derech eretz. They're all wealthy, so they're giving each other gifts that don't really matter. You see, they're not currying favor from a judge, for example, by doing that. It's like friends. You can give gifts to your friends. It's a nice way to express love. Why not, right? And if you don't have money, then you can give your time. And when there's something happens to them, you don't just say, be warm and clothed, right? Or be warm and filled. Or we don't just say, sorry, I'm busy, I got other stuff to do with. We take the time and we give them our time, right? So there's a derech eretz that is not to be confused with bribery, right? So we're talking about bribery, it's usually with men of power, that sort of thing. So does that make sense, Joshua? I think we're getting across two different items here. One is derech eretz, part of derech eretz philosophy, and the other is actually when it becomes a bribe. Now he says, how about a business client? By the way, so so again, I think from the perspective of you as the giver, it's all about your intention, right? Is your intention to bribe them, right? Is your intention to cloud their judgment? So what I'm saying, don't stop sending food to the rabbi. Someone sent me a beef tongue recently, and sometimes I get fruits. Please don't misunderstand. But if your intention is to bribe the person, yeah, their intent needs to be involved on the part of the briber. So I think that's what Yehoshua was getting onto earlier in his previous comment about intent. If you give someone a gift because you just want to help them, or they're poor, they're struggling, something like that, that's different, right? Or you just want to honor a friend or something, that's not a bribe, right? The point is we need to learn to recognize when something is a bribe for us, right? When we get something, if we know it would curry favor. Some people have the fortitude to not care. If somebody gives you something and then later you have to rebuke them about something, you'll still rebuke them, right? I've had people that gave me stuff and I've rebuked them outright before, and they accepted the correction and apologized, and things were okay, right? So it just, if you're someone who is controlled by that or not, then that will help you to determine whether you can accept gifts or not, right? Of course, it's kind of like this. Joshua, I know you're a programmer. It's like you have a generic variable, all right? And let's say it's called motan, a gift, right? But you might scope it, cast it in a certain instantiation where it's a bribe, right? Another time it might just be, say, a birthday gift, right? Another time it just might be, a goodwill gift. Or another, your purpose might just be to say, hey, look, or maybe you talk bad to somebody and you want to make up for it and you get them a gift, right? These are all perfectly appropriate. And this is what the proverb is talking about. But if your intent is to curry favor with an authority for the purpose of getting authority, yeah, then you're doing a bribe. Okay. Nelly says, how about business clients? Actually, let me read Joshua's comment first. He says, gotcha. It's just the expression, lifnei gedolim yanchenu, and brings him before great men or men in authority. Sounds like creating favor before important people to make life easy for you. Right, I got you. Dan says it's like hospitality. Yeah, exactly. The concept of hospitality. I think so. And Nelly says, how about it business clients? Asking for a rebate, is it a bribe so they will order more supplies? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so. No, no. All's fair in love and war and business. Well, what I mean by that is, look, the seller has to do whatever they can. You discount, or maybe you give them a rebate, or maybe you say, if you bring me somebody, you get that's not a bribe. It's clear to everybody what's happening. There's no hidden motive. It's clear to them you want them to buy more from you, right? So where's the bribe, right? Now, if you give them money, if they're the one who makes decisions, and you offer that person a specific gift, right? So they'll choose your company over another company, right? And their company doesn't allow gifts, let's say, to be given to their individual workers. Now it gets a bit hairy, right? Now they are accepting a bribe, right? You give them a all you can eat dinner at Vikings or something, and they really love sushi, right? And you give that gift to them, and their boss doesn't know about the gift. Now, if they disclose it to their boss, I think it's okay. That's kind of a wise thing to do, to be transparent. Say, hey, this vendor gave me this rebate for whatever, and look, I just wanted you to know about this. I still can be impartial, but I also like the gift. You don't pay me much, so yeah. Sometimes it can be really splitting hairs to find out if something's just an incentive, right, a promotion, or if it really is a bribe. Someone writes in private, like an expensive watch to a board member who calls the shots. Yeah, clearly a bribe, right? Clearly a bribe for favor. You're currying favor. Very good point, Mr. Anonymous. The Talmud Tractate Chulin says, who has no slander upon his tongue? This is referring to one who conducts himself like our forefather Jacob, who did not want to mislead father in order to receive his blessings. As it is written, perhaps my father will feel me and will be in his eyes like a fraud. So you see here, Yaakov is even resisting doing what his mother wants him to do. So how do they call him? 17. Let me see. That doesn't mind it. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll do that. I think there's so much in this particular Torah portion. It's hard to, yeah, let me do one more, and let's see how we are in time then, okay? Verse 13. Vatomer lo imo alai kilalotecha beni ahah shema b'koli v'lekach li. Then his mother said to him, upon me be your curse, my son. Only obey me and go take for me, meaning take the kids from me, right? So she's being very strong. Again, obey, do what I say, right? So the Rashbam, according to Sarna, comments that Rebecca confidently brushes aside Jacob's fears because she remembers the oracle she received that the older son was destined to serve the younger, right? She is acting on behalf of heaven. She's acting on behalf of the kingdom. Right? She knows it's supposed to happen. It's a prophecy that Adonai gave to her. Verse 17. Vayelet vaikach vayavele imo vatahos imo matamim kasher ahev aviv. So he went, and he took, and he brought. So we have three short verbs in rapid succession here. Sarna comments, he got them and brought them. So he went, he got them, and he brought them. That the Hebrew has a staccato succession of three short verbs. The effect is a picture of Jacob performing the unpleasant deed with nervous haste for his mother. And his mother made the dainties, the yummy foods, according to how his father likes. Look at his mother here in yellow. Why do I have to highlight it? I don't remember. Oh, yeah, okay, this is the comment from my book. So his mother does not need to be repeated here, right? It says imo. That's not necessary. Vata'as already means she. We already know the subject above is imo, right? So why is it in here again? Again, we must always understand the words in the Torah are deliberate. Why is there that repetition of his mother? It's repeated here, even though it doesn't have to be. It seems the Torah is emphasizing this is all a mother's doing, and the planning, and not Yaakov's, his mother, who had heard from Hashem that the older is supposed to serve the younger. By the way, this is before I was aware of Sarna's comment, so that's nice, the confirmation there. Since that book was written 3 years ago, before I read that from Sarna. His mother, who had heard from Hashem that the older is supposed to serve the younger, is acting to affect his will. So the Torah is constantly reminding us. Rivqah is put before the word amara, she said, right? We have mother repeated again. She uses the word matzavah, I'm commanding you, right? We're seeing that there's no way out, having got a story. For Yaakov, he can't do anything. He has to do what his mother's saying, to be an obedient son. His mother, the prophetess, as the sages underline. Not only is she a mother, she's a prophet. Verse 15. And actually, maybe I'll stop canting. My throat is getting really sore, and we have a time issue. So, ותיקח רבקה את בגדי עשיו, בנה הגדול, החמודות אשר איתה בבית, ותלבש את יעקב בנה הקטן. Then Rivqah took the clothes of Esau, her son, the older son, and the delights which were with her in the house, and she dressed Yaakov, her son, the younger son. Verse 16. ואת אורות גדיי העזים ילבישה על ידיו, ועל חלקת צוואריו. And now we have special emphasis here. Before the verb, we have the object. So, and the skins, like the clothing of the skins of the goat kids, she dressed upon his arms, is literally what it says, and upon the smooth part of his neck. Maybe the nape of the neck would be a good translation there. Verse 17. For those of us with beards, you know your neck gets beard too, but not the back part. The back part doesn't grow a beard unless you got some genetic problems. All right, verse 17. ותיתן המטעמים ואת הלחם אשר עשתה ביד יעקב בנה. Then she set the dainties and the bread which she had made into the hand of Jacob, her son. And so let's look at T10 here. Oh, you can look at the note yourself. I'm not going to explain it. This is just a little Hebrew nuance, not that important. Verse 18. Vayavo el avi vayomer avi vayomer hineni mi ata beni. Then when he came into his father, he said, my father. And he said, behold, I'm here. Who are you? Who are you? He had an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. Who are you? My son. Okay, let's see on the time how we're doing. Okay, I think we're still okay. We'll go a bit longer. Almost done. I won't keep you guys too long. It's too bad because the punch is really at the end of the Josh. I want to give you the punch, but it's fine. Okay, verses 19 and 20. ויאמר יעקב אל אביו, אנוכי עשיו בכורך עשיתי, כאשר דיברת אליי. קום נא שבה ואכלה מצדי בעבור תברכני נפשך. Then Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done according to that which you spoke unto me. Arise now, or arise please, and arise and sit. Kumna Shiva. So he means sit at the table, and the food and the game. I'm sorry, and eat from the game. This is with an emphatic case, so he's speaking really excited here, so that your soul may bless me. So let's see what I have there, Mark B. Anochi Esau. Okay, that's not a note. Okay, there we go, all out of order. The green one. My translation follows carefully the ta'amim, the cancellation marks, to break up the communication in the way which Yaakov carefully walked the tightrope between obeying his mother as she commanded him and not lying directly to his father. This position is found also in Midrash Tanchuma Buber Toldot 10.3 and less so in Rashi's commentary. And for the purple part, where's the purple comment? There we go. The nefesh does the blessing. I just thought that was interesting. My soul, your soul will bless me. It's kind of interesting. Your life force will bless me. Well, what does he mean by that? I'd be interested in feedback if any of you guys have. Verse 20. Vayomer Yitzhak Rabbanon, ma zeh micharta litzmimso b'ni? Vayomer ki hikra Adonai Elohecha lefanai. Then Yitzhak said unto his son, what is this that you have hastened? You acted quickly to find meaning the game, my son. And he said to him, Adonai, your God, happened before me, right? So he had an experience where Hashem helped him. So Yaakov knew if he was to impersonate Esau, he had to speak about spiritual things in the way this way, your God. This is my comment, right? So notice he says Elohecha, not Eloheinu, not our God. Your God appeared before me. So he's impersonating the speech. And this actually goes to support the rabbinic position that the voices were the same, or he made his voice the same, but the speech pattern, at first he was being gentle, right? He's not being crude enough to sound like Esau. And so that's saying the voice is the voice of Yaakov. It means it's gentle voice. It's a respectful voice, right? It's not like my wicked son Esau. So this is a grid that shows the accent markers, the ta'amim, on this verse. And here's the verse divided up by the different accents that own it, okay? So we have breaks on various types of accents. These are the names of the accent marks. So this affects our translation and our tradition and how to translate this. This is very useful. So I want to show you this. So here's how the conversation went down. Then Yaakov said unto his father, he's answering him, right? He says, who are you, my son? Right? Who are you? Who are you? And what happens? This is Yaakov Avinu answering, the righteous Jacob answering. He says to his father, it is I. Right? So his answer on who you are, this is the answer. It is I. Right? So it's belonging to this group, broken up by the Zakef Katon, going to the vayehi and Pashta Aleph. Okay? Anochi, that's his answer. Who are you? Anochi, it is I. So even though he's commanded by his mother, he's trying not to lie. Okay? The next thing he says, this is like having a semicolon in English kind of. The next thing he says is, by the way, Esau bechorecha. Esau is your firstborn. You see? So the way that the accent marks break it up, he's not saying I am your firstborn. He's saying it is I. Esau is your firstborn. Next he says, Asiti, I have done, kasher dibarta, Eli, according to how you've commanded me or told me to do, meaning all my life. I've done the deeds that you've told me. I've studied in the tent. I've sought our God, etc., etc., etc. Kumna, arise now, Shiva, and sit. The Achala, and eat, meat seidi, from my game. Ba'avor, so that, Terachani, nafshech, your soul might bless me. So you see how important, it's not always important that we look at the ta'amim very closely, but sometimes this tradition of how the verse was recited shows us that our ancestor was, even now, he's trying so hard to not deceive his father, not directly at least, not with an outright lie. Maybe withholding information, but he's saying Esau's your firstborn, right? You see? Did everybody get that?